today. I do remind you that it is a work session, so there won't be any public comment today. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and I will offer a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads before thee, grateful for the opportunity to come together today as staff and as a council to discuss the needs and possibilities that lie within our direction here in Lehi City. We pray for our folks that live here and for those that come and visit and those that work here, that they may find joy in doing so. We pray that as we talk about things today, that we might find the right answer as we work together and work out those things that need to be discussed, that we may work in a direction that's progressive and get us to a final answer. And we're grateful for all that we have, and we pray for thy Spirit to be with us as we do so, and offer that prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you. First item, just real quick. Travis, if you'll go ahead and stand, just so everyone recognizes Travis. This is Travis Sharman. Travis was recently hired as our code enforcement officer. So when I saw him in the hallway, we told him we would introduce him so everyone has an idea who he is. As you see him walking through, make sure you reach out to him. But his name is Travis Sharman. Travis, we welcome you. So thanks for coming. Okay, we'll start with discussion item number 2.A, presentation and discussion of the Thanksgiving Point Development Agreement and Participation Agreement. Marlon, do you want to start us with that? Marlon's left the house. Oh, Marlon's right there. Welcome, Marlon.
Run, too?
Marlon is here, so Marlon, we'll let you start, and we'll go from there.
Actually, if it's all right, Mayor and Council, Ryan Thomas with Stock Development actually put together a really good presentation. If you would indulge him to go over kind of the history of the HTRZ and a little bit of why we're here today. The bottom line is our hope is that we can go through any concerns that the council and the mayor might have with the development agreement, participation agreement, to see if we can get something finalized that we can then bring back to the council during a regular session meeting. So if it's all right, before we, Ryan, do you want to go through the presentation first? And then we'll start taking questions and getting into it. Is that okay with the council and mayor? Okay. Do you want to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks,
Marlon. All right.
She's gonna switch, I think. There you go.
Excellent. All right.
Toggle right here.
Beauty. Look at that. Awesome. Ryan Thomas, Stack Real Estate. Happy to be here talking about Thanksgiving Station. Maybe just wanted to start with a few slides. We'd like to keep this, question and answer. This has been in the works for a very long time. Maybe this slide will address kind of just the history. I know there's some new faces on the council, and welcome aboard. Happy to see you here. This is kind of the context of this project here. So Thanksgiving Station, the conversation started back in 2018. The project itself received the concept plan approval, which vested the rights to the 2,000 units here, March 22nd, 2022. So almost 4 years ago. Our area plan was approved, which the area plan, if anyone's not familiar with that, is kind of the governing document of this area. It sets the design standards, the ordinances, many other things, traffic improvement triggers, utilities, infrastructure needed for this project. So all of that is baked within the Thanksgiving Point area plan. And that was approved August 8th, 2023. And then kind of second to last was our HTRZ approval. The HTRZ is the Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone. That is kind of a statewide legislation that promotes smart development, density around key transit stations, Lehi Frontrunner Station being one of those. That approval, that was applied for by Lehi City, and it was approved by GOYO, the government's Office of Economic Opportunity, on November 13th, 2023. I'll spare you the details of all the bullet points there, but as you can see, we've had many council meetings, many planning commission meetings, numerous DRC meetings, 42. We had weekly calls for 2 years with city staff, Kim, Lauren, and others there to make sure we got everything in that area plan right. And then obviously large amounts of pursuit costs to get this project designed properly to be the transit-oriented community that I think everyone wants here. Water purchases, $5.4 million of those dedicated 7 days after our area plan approval. So all of that water is banked within Lehi City wells, or at least Lehi City has the rights to it today. So 7+ years from then to today. So what we are here to talk about today is the development agreement. Has everyone had a chance to kind of review the latest version of that development agreement and see some of the additions and what was taken out of that? So I'll spare you the details again, but over 20 drafts and just shy of 2 years. We started April 2024 with those negotiations with the prior mayor, city staff, everyone representing the city there, including outside counsel, city attorney, finance, planning, engineering, all of the above. So just as a reminder, this is kind of the high-level conceptual site plan for this project. With an emphasis on that kind of straight pathway from the front runner station to the heart of our project. Red represents retail, so that's what we see as kind of the retail village in this area. Structured parking so that you have walkable streets. You're getting cars off the roads, not in big surface parking lots that you'll see. So thoughtful design here and doing density as we believe in the right way, and working with planning staff, we think we got there after many, many years of iterations. So there's more we can cover on, but perhaps it's best just to open it up for question and answer and see what we can address. But maybe one key thing to talk about before we go to that is previously we went to Planning Commission in November and we received a positive recommendation. I'm sure many of you saw the minutes of that meeting and maybe even watched the recording, and I know there was some back and forth on what that motion should be. The big issue that I think we heard from the public, certainly, staff, and I believe potential council members, planning commissioners as well, was the city sales tax backing of the bonds. That component caused a lot of confusion, and what we ultimately heard at the end of the day is even though we felt risk was mitigated to near zero for the city with all the backstops that were put in place there to make sure the developer replenished funds, the city had the ability to levy taxes on the property to replenish any funds that were ever taken out of the city, general fund. We heard it was just too complicated, too risky. And being good members of this community who've been developing here, Stack Gardner, for 20+ years, we want to do something that's right for the city. So we took that component out of this agreement, and I think what we have today is a pretty vanilla development agreement that allows this project to continue forward with the HTRZ as approved. And just as a reminder, the units are approved, the area plan's approved, the density, all of that's approved, the traffic triggers are approved and studied. So we technically, based off the vested rights, could move forward on this project today. We could submit a site plan tomorrow and start moving forward. We want to make sure that the city's on board, that everything's buttoned up in this development agreement, and we believe that's what's in front of you today. So happy to address any questions.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, can you say that one more time? What has technically already been approved? I couldn't write as fast as you were talking.
Sorry, yeah, I have a tendency to talk too fast. The 2,000 units are vested. That is approved. The area plan is approved and recorded. It's in place. The HTRZ is approved and in place as well. So everything about this project, aside from this last development agreement piece, is approved. And like I said, we could submit a site plan and start going on the project tomorrow, just to make sure that we don't dwell on those types of things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask the obvious, then why do a development agreement or site plan?
Yeah, and it certainly started, the development agreement started with getting the sales tax backing for the project there. I think what the development agreement has mostly morphed to today is just codifying this project, the standards that are set there, and the path going forward, setting a timeline on the project and making sure the HTRZ is in place. Maybe Marlon can add some more context.
Also, Councilman Freeman, per state code, it requires that the city enter into a participation agreement with the developer for the HTRZ funding. That is written in code.
Sorry, it does.
Yeah.
What section of code?
But that's separate than a development agreement, right?
Yes.
Participation agreement. I thought your question was about a development.
Mine was about the development
Yeah.
agreement. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so the participation agreement and the development agreement kind of run hand in hand on this, but we do have to enter into at least a participation agreement per the code.
Marlon, since you're up here, have we entered into an interlocal agreement for the HTRZ?
No,
RDA?
that is part of, so once we get the development agreement finalized, then we'll come back with the interlocal agreement between the city and the RDA.
No, I'm talking just about the HTRZ aspect, that's been approved.
Yes.
And my understanding is that there needs to be an interlocal agreement just for that aspect of it. So I haven't been able to find it, so
No,
we don't have one of those yet.
We
Okay.
don't have to. So once the interlocal, so the HTRZ being approved basically gets the funds from the county to the city. The interlocal agreement gets it from the city to the RDA. So we haven't done that interlocal agreement because we've been trying to finalize the development agreement. We'll bring both of those forward at the same time.
Okay, because a lot of documents here, but that was one of the exhibits, and none of the exhibits were included in these documents, so that hasn't even been done yet?
No, not the interlocal agreement. Oh, yes, we do have a draft. Yes, because I did send you the draft. We just haven't, we wanted to get the interlocal, or the development agreement and everything buttoned up, and then give everything to council for one review. The interlocal agreement is basically just almost, Brian, a boilerplate almost, that just gets it from the city to the RDA.
Pass the taxes.
Yeah, pass the taxes through.
But the development agreement isn't necessary for the HTRZ funding, correct?
No, it is not. It's
Okay.
just, it's per state code, it just says we have to have the participation agreement.
Could be like just a bullet list of what's in the developer agreement. Why the developer agreement? Why do we need it? What's being asked?
You want to take a stab? You want me to run at it?
Go ahead. I'll fill in any
I'm gonna miss some. So basically, the development agreement really, Councilman Newell, just kind of codifies. Transportation. We need to make sure that we work hand in hand on providing transportation access, infrastructure. The area plan has it spelled out in there, but there's the triggers that are within the area plan. I know Lauren has quite a few of those triggers already accomplished, whether it be transportation and or public infrastructure, sewer, water. It talks about, and I've been reading both the agreements, so I hope I don't get them both mixed up. In the development agreement, it talks about confidentiality. So we've got grandma request information that's in there. So it kind of just codifies what the development is going to look like and making sure that there's an understanding between the city and the developer of what's responsible for both parties. Is that good,
Mark?
Ryan?
I would say that's spot on. It basically just provides clarity and predictability to the future. We know what our project's going to look like for the period of this development agreement, so we kind of, can predict. When you have a project like this that's multiple phases, you want some certainty of things that are agreed upon up front going forward. So that's the benefit it provides us, and then I think we do the same in return to the city of timelines, what we'll deliver, and everything like that.
One other thing I would like to bring out this is in the development agreement. It does call out a trigger mechanism for the 32,000 square feet of retail space to be completed upon certificate of occupancy for the final phase of this. So that does require the developer to get the retail component completed as well.
Marlon, can you go over the city's obligations that are in the development agreement.
What this basically states, so Article 5, entitlements, all the developer is asking for is that the vested rights that have already been given, that the city upholds the vested rights for this. We also have the, we have a section on here to talk about zoning. That will work within that they'll work within the zoning code. That we will not put zoning in place that only goes against Thanksgiving Point. That obviously, if there's citywide zoning code that's instituted, then that would fall into place. But they don't want us to, as Ryan put it, we don't want the city to force us to have yellow doors on all the units. So that's kind of a section of that. Moratorium, that we're not going to put a moratorium on the development itself. And then the processes for review is basically our process that we already have through the DRC process. Timing rate of development, additional property. City obligations, water and sewer improvements, as stated. This starts 6.1. That I believe Lauren can address that, but the majority of the water and the sewer, I believe, has already been built out and is ready for the development. As the developer stated, they've already turned in the water rights for the entire development, $5.4 million. The roadway improvements, again, these, we did ask for a section within this that Clubhouse Drive was an original component of that. It was taken out. They will support a northern east-west connector. Supporting meaning that they would show support if the city was able to find funding, or UDOT or whoever was going to put an east-west connector in play.
Point of clarification. So is that could that be anything that was east and west, or is that a specific? Not necessarily Clubhouse Drive. I get that's off the table.
Right.
Great.
Yep.
But could that be the one we've talked a lot about that goes I-15 to Mountain View, or could it also be a different connection, right? Like
any type of connection.
Any
that's
type
north
of connection
of Thanksgiving Point.
that is
would
not
help
Clubhouse
alleviate.
Drive.
That is not Clubhouse Drive. That would alleviate the traffic congestion.
Okay.
Engineering department, not to throw Lauren under the bus, but they have been actively looking at what are options. The east-west connector, the freeway connector we call it, or is there other options that could go in there? So we're looking at what can transpire, but it would be some type of connector on the northern point.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And then Marlon, on that specifically, it says freeway, right? So is that, because it says Point of the Mountain Connector Freeway.
Yes, and in talking with engineering, Brad felt that he was comfortable leaving that in. I was going to change it just to Point of the Mountain East-West Connector.
Okay.
Just so that, okay, could it be a road? Could it be...
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't want to pitch. I think at the end of the day, the reality is the development, both Stack and Gardner, not to speak for them, but they would both be in favor of any type of traffic solution that will alleviate traffic within Thanksgiving Point. All we're asking for is that they just support whatever we come up with. We're not asking for financial support from them or anything like that. We're just asking for support.
And then does this still hold the same limitations that Clubhouse did in the original agreement, that they can't exceed the 2,000 units in that area? In the original, it was until Clubhouse was built. Would this then replace that?
So in the area plan, per the traffic study, the 2,000 units can be developed in Thanksgiving Point without Clubhouse Drive going in.
Right.
Once we hit that, and Lauren, you might have to jump in. Once we hit failure point on Triumph and the road system in there, then that would dictate when another solution will have to come into play. Is that Clubhouse Drive? Is that a northern east-west connector? I can't answer that at this time.
Okay.
But it is written in the area plan that there will need to be some type of additional traffic measures that are put into place.
Yeah,
Okay.
so nothing changes with that. And that's my concern is they are limited to 2,000 in that area until there is a traffic solution, whatever that may be.
Correct.
Okay.
And 2,000's the max anyway. So just to clarify, though, in the development agreement here, it does say that we'll make diligent efforts, complete design and construction of the roadways that are described in the improvement and trigger summary set forth in the area plan. And as far as looking at the area plan right now, and the Clubhouse Drive is still there, we would need an area plan amendment to change that. So to me, as it's written here, we would be committed to these roads and to advocate for these roads. I'm not comfortable with that. There's a lot of things in here I'm not comfortable with, but we've got a lot of roads we need in Lehi. I don't know if the city should just be advocating for funding and design from UDOT of roads specific for this development. So there, I mean, that's an obligation set in this development agreement for the city. Some other things you didn't mention is that the city agrees, 4.2, city agrees to take such action as necessary to create and establish a PID in conjunction with the project. I'm not comfortable with that at all. I mean, the whole point of this is for affordable housing, and to add, and the law limits you up to 15 mils, which is much larger than the city can even charge. There's a lot of things I'm not happy with about this. I think it obligates the city to much more than what was described.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not seeing that it's needed, that the city needs to do this, obligated to do this. Yeah, it's in here twice.
If it's helpful, I can touch on the PID, the PID. That was originally put in there so that the city would have, basically taxing authority is transferred to the PID. The city would have authority over the PID to place what's called the mill levy, raise our assessed values on the properties, right? Raise the mill levy, the tax rate, to recoup any losses the city would have taken in that bond structure. That is no longer the case. The reason the PID is still left in there is just in case we wanted to establish our own PID for the project. All that does is raise the amount of taxes we pay for the project, but that can be helpful in the event of going out to bond, right? Because just like a lot of single-family home builders do, they will put that PID in place so they can establish a mill levy on the property. They can then go bond against that future income stream that comes from the mill levy within the PID.
Yeah,
so
and
it's just a financial instrument to get money up front.
Excuse me. So the PID is giving taxing authority to a developer. It's again up to 15 mils annually, and the residents have no say. They can move in, and there's a lot of concerns. There's legislation on correcting some things with PIDs. It's very problematic.
One thing to keep in mind is that these are rental housing units. We will be the owner of them, so we're increasing the taxes only on ourselves there.
That you'll recoup for rent.
Yeah,
Well,
Let's be honest.
And I understand that thought, but you can never push beyond market, right? If we put a PID in place, we can't raise rents any more than our competition is pricing rents at, or we price ourselves out of the market.
There's concerns throughout the state about renters being surprised by these kind of things. So it'd be nice to say that it never happens, but it has. So I'm actually not comfortable with any of this. But these are glaring. To me, this very much favors you guys. I don't see the benefit to the city for this. I don't see the benefit for future residents. And I know the argument is you're going to increase property tax revenue by building these 2,000 units, but there's also cost to the cities. These roads that we're expected to, I guess, lobby for, advocate for, try to get built, this costs a lot of money, and these are located outside of the development, but they'll benefit the development. And those costs are huge. And you're already getting 80% of the tax increment, property tax increment, 80% that could have gone to our school district. And now you're wanting us to bond, you wanting us to create a PID so you can tax these future residents. And if I'm a free market person, if you can't build it, and maybe you shouldn't. I mean, you're vested rights, but we don't have to fund it.
Sure. And we're not asking for the city to provide anything in terms of bonding. That's all been taken out of this agreement. So none of that's needed. The PID would just be a PID on our own properties that we pay the taxes on. There's no pass-through to the tenants in that sense there. So no bonding needed in this one. That was the big concession I feel like we've made in this agreement.
Do you need the PID in order to make this functional? Like, why is it in there?
It's nice to have, and it's just a tool that's been used for these large-scale projects where we have private roads within this project. There are a lot of costs that a typical builder doesn't necessarily need to take on and continue with ongoing maintenance. A lot of times those roads are dedicated back to the city, right, and they become kind of a city obligation. Here, we're going to be snow plowing those, striping them, maintaining them, all that type of stuff. So it's nice to have. Do I think we're going to use it? I can't say it's a 10-plus year project. We don't intend to, but it's a nice tool to have at our disposal if needed, is what I would say.
And how would you notify the tenants that they're a part of something like that?
I guess I truly don't understand or see any impact that falls on them. It falls on the net operating income of the property, and like I said, the market is the number one governor. We can't price ourselves out of what we provide as a benefit to the market. They're only going to pay for that.
If I think of top line revenue, which comes from the rent paid, right? And the tenants are paying that rent to meet the operating expenses that the PID would be participating in. So eventually it does meet the consumer.
You're right. Top line revenue, operating expenses. Property taxes sit in operating expenses, which then drop down to your net operating income, correct?
Yeah.
So we're padding our expenses and losing some profit in that sense for the benefit of getting money up front to help catalyze a project to go. So it's an absolute trade-off. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
One other comment about the PID is it would also author or give tax-exempt bonding, which does give a lower interest rate. So there is a little bit of an incentive for the PID to be put in place as well.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to point out. 4.4, the agency, which is the city, agrees that at the request of the participant, which is Thanksgiving Point Development, it shall use reasonable efforts to issue tax increment revenue bonds through the redevelopment agency, or if the participant has created a PID. So these are things that we're discussing that I also have concerns with. I don't know if you can also go back to that previous slide and the area plan, but it specifies there that only up to 1,200 units can be built until, in that area plan slide you were showing us, until there is prior to the completion of the Clubhouse Drive extension or the 2100 North Freeway. So, I guess this won't be happening anytime soon. We have 2100 North coming in. But there are some things in there, the area plan that we don't necessarily, that we might need to look at again. So,
Marlon, just to clarify that understand that this is for 2,000 units, but the trigger in place for Clubhouse was for additional. There's other landowners, there's other type of properties in the area. That is the point of having that trigger still in place that would disallow any other type of future development in that area until there are traffic there. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yes.
Okay.
but here it looks like that 2100 North Freeway would satisfy that east-west connector.
That's what gets them to the 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah, the
But
2100
what
north.
prevents any other developer in that area, even commercial or anything like that, is what it has right now is Clubhouse Drive. It could be replaced with the Point of the Mountain Freeway connector, it's basically a trigger that holds that area to not be able to develop beyond this 2,000 units.
Am I understanding correctly too that the commercial development will not happen until after the 2,000 units are built?
No, per the development agreement, the was it, Ryan, 1,300 units that's contemplated in the development agreement with the participation agreement. The 32,000 square feet of retail will have to be completed before they get certificate of occupancy for the final phase, which will probably be the last 300 units, because you don't do them 1 unit at a time. You do them in 350 unit developments.
Okay.
I can't remember where. I think it may have been the December 4th Planning Commission meeting notes, but I remember if the PID is not approved, I believe you guys said you probably wouldn't get to your max density of 2,000 units, which is approved. You have every right to build that because it's been approved since 2023, but...
The HTRZ?
Yes.
Yeah, the HTRZ, yeah.
Okay. So with the HTRZ, you still plan to move forward to build as many units as you can, up to the allocated amount?
Yes.
Okay.
And it will take time. It will not happen overnight by any means. It will take a long time. Each project takes 3 years to build.
Oh, okay, I'll just have a comment. I'm opposed to the development agreement if we have to enter a participation agreement. I thought it was just interlocal. I'm looking at the effective code from 2023, but I would want that participation agreement to just stick what was allowed in the HTRZ with the application and the state approval, which my understanding it was that the 80% for the 25-year, 2 phases of 25 years, and that money would go towards construction costs of the high-rise apartments and the parking structure. The participation agreement here, it opens it up to all costs associated with the development. I'd like to stick with what was originally agreed upon and not have a development agreement.
I'm thinking and
Yeah, I also really struggle with development agreements. I have a record of not enjoying them or appreciating them, but I do. I appreciate the work session because it allows me to kind of process through and yeah, it's definitely not my favorite thing.
And I can understand that. And the only thing I'd add, Marlon kind of touched on it, but when you do have a project that'll span, potentially 2 decades to be built out here, you need some certainty that, design standards aren't going to change something crazy, that everything has to be red brick throughout this area.
Don't you get that in the area plan?
That is what our area plan does, but what this development agreement does is protect us from changes to that. We basically just lock in, hey, here are design standards today, and those are going to stay consistent for the term of this development agreement for the life of this project. Because you could have the instance where someone comes in and says, no, everything's red brick now. And
Yeah.
we've had a design thing going, and now you have to shift and
Yeah.
accommodate something different.
This reminds me of our last meeting where Cold Spring Ranch, we changed the area plan, right? And those citizens have a right to petition their government for change. So it concerns me, if I'm understanding you correctly, just help me if I'm not, but it would concern me that you're essentially saying this development agreement prohibits residents from petitioning their government for change on the area plan. And I want to make sure that we don't prohibit them if they move in and have, but I also at the same time am weighing out the fact of the risk of the development, right? So I guess there's kind of 2 sides to this coin.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, and what I would just maybe remind the council of is that process happened when the area plan was approved, right? I mean, there was plenty of public comment that came out. The council members at the time weighed in on their decision, and we had to revise multiple times to come back till we got it right, where it felt like everything was in a good place, that yes, this is what we want to see this developed as going forward under these standards here.
Yeah, and that also happened with Cold Spring Ranch, but once it grew and there was enough residents, they found a need for change, right? And so, again, I'm not really making absolute statements, more just processing out loud to kind of have this dialogue, and I appreciate the candid nature of the conversation.
And I think even with the area plan, to Michelle's point, this participation agreement is referring back to the area plan, which refers to the Clubhouse Drive extension. So do we need to first amend this area plan before we can, talk about the participation agreement? Just because I know that Clubhouse Drive, I mean, personally, I don't, it doesn't relieve regional traffic. In fact, it probably brings much more traffic into this area. And if it's not part of our overall strategy as a city to build out that road, then would it make more sense to amend the area plan first to start with? I don't know.
I guess I would say where it's an either or, I don't personally see it having implications here, and it's kind of shown on our traffic trigger summary right there on
It's
this.
in the area plan that it has Clubhouse Drive beyond our project, so
It's still on there, is the point.
we,
And if you want to change it to just a connector, then yeah, we would need to amend the area plan first.
Also, you said it's beyond your project, but it's 2031, and you said this would take 2 decades, so potentially
well, we've
could
been
not
working
be.
on it for a long
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
sometimes some of our dates for the area plan that we submitted on are a little off.
Yeah, I guess I would say we didn't plan on being 2 years into the development agreement before we started the project. So yes, some dates have shifted, and Lauren and his team have done a fantastic job of exceeding most of the deadlines for the Lehi projects on here.
I just want to say I appreciate you bringing this to us. I understand that there are risks. There's also the city kind of upfront has to do some of the infrastructure outside of your project, right? Is what I understand. Some of the there's some things that have to be in place, outside roads or whatever. You have to do some internal roads, things like that. Typically, we would gather impact fees and we would help build some of the things after housing's built. Also nearby, you have some nonprofit area that doesn't pay property tax that, the city has provides services to as well that will affect your area. Whether it's that specifically, but you kind of get the benefits of some of those things that the city provides for the nonprofit area. So
Yeah.
there are some things that the city's done for that area as well.
Absolutely, and that is not lost on us. And I do think that a lot of those improvements that were done in this area help the greater region, not just Lehi. They help, obviously, Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs, who create a lot of that traffic coming through. So I would say, while these were outlined in this table as improvements, that Lehi City had to do, I wouldn't say those were necessarily done just for this project, right? But yes, we're very grateful to have that, and in return, we have our list of projects we have to complete as well, too, which will further add regional benefit.
Maybe I just need to weigh in a little bit, if I could. When we did 2300 West and the widening on 2100 North and the 2150, I'd have to mark them off, but there's probably 80% of what we have to do is done. We actually had other funding with MAG and stuff, so we've been fortunate enough. We did pay it up front, and their fees will help us pay back our funds that we participated, but I'd have to mark those off, but there's only like 1 or 2 left that we have not done. And I think the one is on site at, what is it? There's one on site. The rest of them are all off site or all done. And when they did, and they're doing 2100 North, so those triggers and things are all basically complete, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's great. The city's done their due diligence there.
And that one, we're
and I
pretty
appreciate it.
excited that we're ahead of the
Yeah.
game.
So if it's mostly done, then we probably don't need, again, I don't want to do a development agreement. I'd vote against it, but we wouldn't need this in here to obligate the city to advocate for those roads.
I thought we did take something out. It just references, I don't remember what it exactly says. But
Well, Clubhouse Drive and in general, it talks about, the roads on the table. And my concern is we've got a lot of roads we're trying to get funding for. So I don't want to obligate the city to work for, we need to advocate for what is most needed by our residents. And that's probably where we have existing problems, not future problems, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessary, because I think the intent with Clubhouse Drive was because there was going to be pushback. Golf course has said it would do irreparable harm. I don't think Clubhouse is anything that is a concern, other than it basically holds hostage the area, right? That there can't be for future development beyond that unless there is a replacement for it. But having to, say in a developer agreement that we need to have advocates for some type of construction that doesn't actually go through the development, I don't know, unless there's some concern that the Point of the Mountain Connector would impact this development area, that there would be something that would need to be given up so that there's a reason that you would need to advocate to have that happen. I know that's something a lot are pushing for when the time does come, but I don't know if it would have the same impact that Clubhouse Drive was going to have.
Let me ask a quick question, Lauren. When you as engineering go to MAG, do we bring the transportation corridors that we're going to go after funding for to council, or do you do them unilaterally through engineering? In other words, what I'm driving at is, does these that are listed on the bottom, the beyond 2031, does it obligate the city to go after those funding, or does the council set direction on what roads we're going after for funding?
We do that on a multi-year. Obviously, the master plan has all these in, and so does Trans 50, and then again Trans 55. They're just our model to a build-out condition, not necessarily. In their impact fee, we do designate certain things for the next 5-10 years, which we did last week. Was it 2 weeks ago? That has indicated roads that we are going to build in the 5 and 10 year period. And Clubhouse is not in that list, just so you know.
And the mayor goes to MAG and represents us. So we.
Correct. So does engineering. So engineering and myself go to MAG once a month. I look at those roads. MAG's already funding 2028, 2029 projects. So, yes, we're aware of those.
My name's Andrew Bybee. I'm with Stack Real Estate and the project. Nice to meet you all. Haven't met a few of you guys face to face. This has been a helpful discussion. I think what we're hearing loud and clear is you want a participation agreement. You don't want a development agreement. And why don't we go back and take a look at that in just a participation agreement form and not a development agreement form, and we'll come back with a future discussion. How's that?
Are you going to throw the development agreement and call it a participation agreement?
We're going to go back and look at the participation agreement. We're going to look at the HTRZ code, and we're going to try to align it to as perfectly as you're looking for it to be aligned. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a host of things that are already approved, and sounds like you guys already know that, and we know that. We want to develop what we have approved. We're not trying to sneak anything else in. We want to develop what we have approved. And if the participation agreement matching perfectly with the HTRZ is the way to do that, then that's what we're going to do. So let us go back and do that homework, and we'll work with Ryan Wood and outside counsel on our side and outside counsel on your side and come back to you. Does that work?
Yeah, I'm agreeable to that. I also, if you bring something back, if there's like Exhibit A, Exhibit B, whatever, if we can include those documents, so we don't have to go searching for them, and anything else that would be helpful for us. I read hundreds of pages of the stuff, so good with that. Okay?
Cool.
So, Marlon, that would be helpful because there are things that are approved, but I think it'd be helpful for all of us on the council to have those documents. So the application that you made to the state, to GOEO, the application, and then the approval, what was approved. Because I did hunt and found it eventually. I think that would be good to know, for the whole council to know what's approved. And my position is I will honor, I have to, right? Happy to honor that. But I'm not comfortable with the additional asks going forward.
Fair enough.
Councilman Newell, you're council member. Good. Councilmember Harrison, you're good with that. Councilmember Freeman, good.
Yes.
Councilmember Stallings, councilmember. Okay. So with that said, you're also part of 2.B. Do we want to make those? I'm assuming we want to combine those for that's soccer field. I'm assuming you want to go that way. Okay. Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for your time, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to 2.C, And we'll actually, I need to ask if we can potentially table this because Mike West is out sick today. And so, is everybody okay if we move this to the next work session? Is that okay with everybody? Okay, great.
Does Kim want to
He
say
feels
something?
bad that he couldn't be here. And Brad Kennison is also out
He's
of
also
town.
out of town.
His son is getting married, so he's.
He got
anyways,
married.
yeah, he got married. He just hasn't come home yet. So if you're okay, I mean, if you have any questions or things that you want us to cover, but I know Mike was going to do some additional information.
Yeah, I know Mike has the
Yeah.
major push
Yeah.
on this. So let's, if
Okay.
you guys are okay with that, let's push it and we'll get Mike to present.
Can I just ask what he was planning, just generally, what he was planning to present?
I think he would like to just kind of walk through, zoom out a little bit and talk about the safe systems approach, which is the FHWA's new, how do we think about roads more comprehensively and balance vehicles with other types of modes of travel, and then start to drill in on, what does that look like for us, and how do, where do we want to strike that balance? What are the trade-offs? So I think he can walk you through some slides, and then we can just jump right into what do we want now to do with 700 South, and what are some options for the future. So I think he'll be very prepared. He's got the influenza B, so he's on quarantine. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I think nobody here wants to get rid of bike lanes necessarily. We're trying to find a better solution, at least for 700 South. And I know this is part of the overall transportation plan throughout the city, and we have different types of bike lanes throughout the city and different roads. And so, I think we can look at it more comprehensively over time. But specifically for 700 South, since that's the one that garners the most attention from residents in that area, figuring out what works best long term for both bikers, pedestrians, and drivers. So I look forward to that.
Mayor, could I make maybe I'll just give you a little insight. You did ask some questions about alternatives, and maybe you've got some that you're in your mind, but we did look at, leaving it alone, obviously, or enhancing it in its position. Do we put in, which we have talked before with prior council, a barrier that goes down, and that was discussed quite heavily with the prior council. That's an option. They all come with money. The other one, do we eliminate and go to bikes on both sides? That's been requested. We did look at that. We have funds. You can't just arbitrarily change something, because what happens when you have paint like that, what we found out, and there's BJ. You really can't. You almost have to redo the road partially to get rid of the paint if you're going to redo a lot of painting. So there's a lot of cost with just trying to go back to, say, a different type of alignment. So we've been working on those costs. So if you have some particular alternative you want us to look at, that would be helpful to know too.
Yeah, so I'm not an artist by any stretch, but I do like, and this is coming from talking to residents. Like, I don't live on 700 South per se, but I live nearby. I commute on it. I do like the idea of having bike lanes on either side of the road, and a lot of the residents who have reached out in favor of the bike lanes, they like that it's protected by vehicles, right? So parked vehicles. So I don't know what that looks like, but if we had it on both sides, if we had, a protected lane up against the gutter with parking along that lane, right? I think it would make more sense to both bikers and to drivers.
That's one of the alternatives. So
Okay.
Two-way instead of
We've
Yeah.
looked at several locations around here that even have them. In Salt Lake, he'll be showing you some that have the cars parked. They have a buffer. Not necessarily a cycle track actually puts a physical barrier in. That runs the cost up, but we are looking, and he has those. That's why it's not. But I wanted to see if there was something different that we didn't know. But we have been looking at that one.
Yeah, and obviously funding. I mean, if we had unlimited money, I like the idea of having the wide sidewalks with part of it being a bike lane, part of it being pedestrian. But I think not knowing the cost, but probably guessing it would be much more expensive. So I think the next
we're
best
trying
option.
to keep within a reasonable amount, whatever that means.
Yeah.
$1 million nowadays is not a big amount. It seems like that's common. So, but those are three that we are looking at.
Okay.
Just so you're aware, and be free to, if you have another idea that I've heard basically from those three items in particular.
Okay, great.
Lauren or Kim or I could email Mike. I wonder if we can broaden the discussion too and look at options to find ways to get these built. So whether it's new development, can we make it a requirement, or would it have to be, some kind of a in lieu of, or whatever, some trade-off? Or I've sent you pictures of my dream bike lanes, and
Over in American Park,
yes,
yeah.
yes, and they were able to figure it out. So I'd love to look at that too, maybe separately from this or sometime. But
Okay.
thanks.
And do we know the timeline? Sorry, Mayor. On as 700 South becomes 600 South, going into Jordan Wells, do we know the timeline on the widening of that road?
We have funds for that actually extension on the road and I don't remember when what year was it?
I think
2
the
years from now?
design funds could be released late
More
this
soon.
year, and then the construction probably wouldn't be for till 2027. So, but it's getting closer. That was on the previous MAG cycle, so it's usually 2 years out. So
Yeah.
I think this year we may have funding to at least do the design, and then the construction would probably be the following year.
That's good to know, because obviously I think the intent is for these bike lanes to eventually connect to the Jordan River Trail.
That's correct.
And then you have the new developments just north of the Cho property that's going to add more traffic. And as you know, that road is very small, so I'm sure that'll be welcome news to the residents in the area.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I requested this item be on the agenda was because, I have my opinion of what bike lanes should look like. But then as I asked more questions, like with you, Kim, and Mike, I think, last year before I was even elected, I was asking questions. I realized it was a lot more complex than just a simple fix. We have cars that are being hit. We have people trying to back out of driveways that are almost extended because you have a double bike lane there, and they have bicyclists coming from either direction that they have to account for. I find myself that it made it more difficult to see bicyclists and pedestrians crossing with the white poles. But just it's a complex issue, and I feel like if we do have a whole presentation on kind of looking at safer systems approach, since we are not experts on that would help us all to be able to make good educated decisions about that. So thank you. Thanks to Mike in the future.
Yeah, we'll definitely circle back as soon as we can.
So I will make sure this is on our next work session. Let Mr. West aware so he's prepared. Okay, 2.D, sidewalk funding discussion. Councilmember Freeman, I know this was tell us what's on your mind.
Well, again, I just started asking questions to try to figure out how sidewalks are prioritized in the city, kind of the cost, so we kind of know. During last year, again, I was asking a lot of questions and figured out that it was the idea had been it will cost the homeowner about $277 a month over a 10-year time period, which I think was approximately $33,000 or plus. So, and I think doing research that actually doesn't even really cover the cost all the way. So I was wanting to know, what is the cost, and how are we prioritizing sidewalks? Because I think we've all had multiple residents reach out to us and say, this isn't safe. We need sidewalk care. We need sidewalk care. And how has the city been doing it in the past, since I haven't been, obviously involved in that decision making? So I'd love to hear from anyone who's willing to talk about that and just kind of maybe get a sense from the council of how we want to go forward. I have ideas that I kind of, but anyways.
If you're looking at me, there's the guy. We have been working on it.
Cam, you're ready.
Cameron's put together a very interesting presentation.
All right. So I anticipate some of those questions because if you remember, Matt sent out a survey asking what your interests would be about sidewalks, and a lot of those similar questions were in that survey. And so hopefully this will be helpful. Help answer some of that, but. All right. So first talking about sidewalk priority. So I've talked with engineering, I've talked with our streets department, and they're both here to answer some questions if this raises any questions. But first thing I propose is that we get a better system. All right. So typically, this is historically how we've made policy decisions on sidewalks. Any new development typically will install the new sidewalks. You've probably heard that before. But we have these areas where we have missing pieces throughout the city. So as a city, we've prioritized those, kind of given them kind of an expectation of what the priority would be. So first priority is near schools. We want to make sure that they're installed near schools. And the second priority is near any parks or recreation. And then third would be along major collector roads, and then along minor roads, and then limited use areas where you're not really seeing a lot of pedestrian traffic. And I can share this presentation with you as well. But this next map has kind of an idea of what we're looking at in the downtown area as far as that goes. The lime green is any sidewalk that is already completed or has been completed probably in the last 10, 15 years. White is sidewalk that's been there long term. And then you can see the red is near schools, purple is near parks and recreation, orange is along a collector road, yellow is minor roads, and then blue is limited use. So there's not a lot of red left on this map. There's a little bit, I think, down by the high school maybe. But mostly you're seeing near the parks, and then also along the collector road would be kind of the next priorities there. So, and then as far as cost, we're looking at about currently it's about $350 per linear foot. So to give you an idea, one block in the downtown area is 400 feet. So on one side of a block to install sidewalk is about $140,000. And the challenge here is that we're not just talking about the concrete, we're talking about curb and gutter. A lot of times we're talking about storm drain. We're talking about driveway access points and those kind of things. So overall, the average is about $350 per linear foot. Any questions so far on any of that?
So that map that you have with the different colors, that just shows basically north of Center or Main Street and like just the downtown. Or do you have it of the whole city? Have you?
So we mostly have focused on the downtown area.
Okay.
Because that's where the most critical missing pieces probably are. But we could definitely get sidewalk maps for the whole city. Jason DeWitt with our engineering department put this together. He showed this a couple of years ago, so I had him update it for most recent. So this is our recent sidewalk map. Yeah.
So Cameron, did that number include curb and gutter? And
the 350?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be
not
the
just
whole
sidewalks.
complete
Okay.
project. So just to give you an idea of what we have spent since 2016, I had some help with finance and with Lauren, but we've used CDBG money for the downtown sidewalks, and since 2016, we've spent $2.424 million on CDBG projects, and much of that includes sidewalks and storm drain improvements. We did get a grant a few years ago, the Safe Routes grant that installs sidewalks around schools. For $366,000. We have a fund for the Class C roads fund where BJ has $750,000 in that fund that he mostly uses. This is mostly for repairing sidewalks. So he's been fixing ADA ramps throughout the city and repairing damaged sidewalks like around the trees and those kind of things. And so mostly that's what that fund goes to. As part of our transportation funds and Class C road funds, but occasionally we will use that to install new sidewalks, like we did down on 900 North by the school down there. And then occasionally we've started to supplement with transportation tax, supplement the CDBG project. So, as you've had discussions on funding CDBG, we don't always fund that whole project as we allocate some of those funds for other projects. And so Lauren's been able to use the transportation tax that we get to help supplement that cost. So just for your information, I just took out all the lines so that you can see in the last 10 or 15 years what we have done in the downtown area as far as sidewalks. So you can see we've been able to take a big chunk out of that area, get a lot of those sidewalks done using CDBG and the other grant funding for that. So, and then I asked engineering to help me get an idea of what it would cost to finish out those sidewalks in the downtown area. So the high priority areas around schools and parks, that cost estimate would be about $2.478 million. And then the lower priority areas, everything except for around the schools and parks and recreation, is about $9.934 million.
And this is citywide.
This is just in the downtown area.
Okay.
Just that area you saw on the map.
Okay.
Tim, do we have a lot of area outside the downtown area that's missing? I know probably a few neighborhoods on the outskirts that have some of those old people that live in county homes still that haven't been annexed in. I'm assuming that's probably the majority of it, correct?
Yeah, if I understand right, the majority of the missing sidewalks are in the downtown area. There are some areas outside of that.
Cameron, I have those numbers. It's more outside.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's 6.5 miles in downtown that's left, 14.5 miles outside of downtown. So
Okay.
total cost $53 million citywide.
Okay.
Councilmember Newell, how much of that 14.5 is county land, though? Do you
I
have
don't
that
have
breakdown?
number.
Okay.
No.
So that's a good point too. As it's annexed into the city, there'd be an expectation there.
And
So.
from what I understand, if a lot is over a certain size, you don't require a sidewalk to be put in a new property. Is that right? Or BJ, I think, is the one who told me
They're
that.
still part.
1 acre.
Larger than 1 acre?
Okay.
Let's see, they have to dedicate, don't they have to dedicate and do 100 feet or something, though? Doesn't that-
Minimum? Yeah, there is a minimum.
Yeah, there is a minimum on those. They don't have to do their full frontage, but they do have to do a part.
Okay.
And probably the most of what you're outside is developable areas that have not been developed yet.
So can I ask a quick question? So we brought up unincorporated area. How, and I think I copied you on an email, but I can't remember. Can the city make improvements on county land that's still in the county? Okay.
She actually sent an email out and requesting that particular road we've looked at a couple of times. They actually own out into the road. And so we've looked at that area.
Okay.
We may approach them again, but we don't, unless you want to use other powers, that one's been really tough.
So
They didn't want to. They don't want sidewalks. to
Let me
property.
explain maybe just so all of you can
I am aware, yeah.
the same context. It was on 1700 West, I think. Is that
In
what it was?
elementary school, yeah.
Yeah, it's right south of River Rock
Yeah.
Elementary.
Well, if you go down there, it's easy to see. His corral goes right out into touches the asphalt, and so their safe routes to school does not include that side. Well, to get funding, you have to have it in their safe routes. so it's kind of a two-edged sword, but that is on our goal to see if we can't talk to them again this time. But that's a big problem, just that.
Okay.
We would have done it if we would have got the right-of-way before.
So right away is the issue. And can schools they can update their safe routes?
They can.
Okay.
But
If
they can't put it in their safe routes because they can't get kids up the street.
Okay.
So it's a kind of a tough problem because you can't have them walk them out in the street. So we actually cross the street, go up, and then cross back.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
I was just going to ask for a clarification. So the cost that you quoted, Cameron, that does not include any right-of-way purchase or anything. That's strictly construction costs,
I
right?
think so, yep.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Just one more quick thing. Fortunately, in the downtown area in particular, there's not too many areas that needs right of way. There are a few, and I don't know if they show up there. But luckily, the town was set out in the early, I don't even know when it was, 30s, and they had roads, and they were 66 foot wide, and that's what you see on the drawing.
I can send this map out so that you can see it a little bit better, but you can see on this map there's 5 areas that need right-of-way. Everything else, I think, we're good there. So any questions about any of that? Anything that we can clarify to help with your discussion?
So let's pretend you have 10 places that need a sidewalk. How would you prioritize those? And they're all, by parks, or by a school or something. How, what's the mechanism for deciding that? Is it the resident's request? Is it you look at whether it's an elementary or a high school? I mean, how, I just am curious, the age of the home, the age of the residents, there's some different factors there. I'm just kind of curious
We'll
how
look
that
at
works.
several things, all of the above. I mean, we'll look at comments, a lot of calls that come in. We'll also look at the number of kids that may be on that particular road. And so sometimes we even do some counts, view what's happening there. Sometimes it's also critical elements. The kids can walk and they're fine, but maybe it's got a shoulder on it or something that make it tough. So there's probably about 6 or 7 or 8 things we kind of look at to kind of make that choice.
Lauren, I think in the downtown area, there are also areas that are maybe more challenging with storm drain issues and that. Do you take that into account as well? Because that would be a more costly project.
Things are very expensive, and you try to take a little bit of low fruit because you want to do more. We're working on a couple right now we had one on 9th North. Maybe you saw this up by 12th East. That has been around since long before I was born. That was a tough one. That took a lot of money, and we finally just decided to do it. But you can say maybe you shouldn't have done that. You should have done 8 more blocks downtown. But that one's been around a long time. It started to get a lot of traffic. So we bought it or whatever you did. Bit the bullet. Yeah, there you go. Buy it. That one was a tough piece to do. It was very expensive, and we decided it was just time to get it done. So, and that was not out of CDBG. That was out of tax funds.
I've heard too that you try and complete routes. Like if it's missing on both sides, maybe you'll do one side, but trying to get routes like the high school kids being able to get to Quench It. That was the one we did last year, right? That because you had a lot of kids that were walking on the shoulder or middle of the road, but then. So maybe then when that happens, deprioritize the other side of the sidewalk. You're trying to get at least one side of the sidewalk or at least one path through to each of these, destinations. Is that?
No, very good point. Okay. We often do that because they can get on one side and the other, and the other side isn't important, but at least have a walk on a street to us is an extremely important issue.
Our next map will update with safe routes to soda shops so that we can as well. So
the other thing I was curious about too, because in talking to council members in other cities, they don't do this. They don't use their CDBG money for this. American Fork uses it to upgrade their water and sewer lines, and so it seems kind of unique to Lehi. I don't know if the narrative has been very well shared that we're using grant money to do this because we care about that, and it is making improvements to these property owners' home. It's, they're giving their land so that we could put a sidewalk there and then be able to maintain it. And I think that's part of the, I know we want to do it faster, but we are doing it in a way that I feel like we can justify it because it's using grant money. But I would be curious if other cities, it came up last time when we had talked about this, that there was other grants that cities had pursued beyond the CDBG money, beyond safe routes, that we might be able to do, or other funding ways that we could, I don't know if there's other cities that use a participation model to help, but I also know in this area, that's kind of difficult too, to be, if we're we're using CBDG money, that's because it is for moderate to low income housing. So I'd be curious just to be able to understand that more fully, because I think there's the idea that other cities are doing what we're doing, and that's not what I've been able to find.
I actually did find that other cities do that, and I know American Fork uses CDBG money for sewer projects, which I thought that was interesting. But Councilmember Hancock, I think, a while ago referred us to a program, and I called and talked to staff about their program. They actually use their own money to pay for sidewalks. So I think there are cities that do that, and there are. He did mention grants, so I could pull up my notes and definitely look into those things. But
Just for our information, do you know what city that might have been that uses their funding?
I can look through my emails, but it's. Do you remember? I'll have to look at my. It was like a district thing.
Oh. Okay.
But yeah, and they had different programs, and one of them was, like kind of the special district thing. Where the property owners pay for public sidewalks, but he said they never had anybody do that. So they use, and I'll definitely look that up.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
'Cause we've been doing some research to try and find what other cities are doing, and we found that most of the cities have some sort of cost-sharing program for repairing sidewalks. So if you already have the sidewalk, but it's damaged, they require the citizens to pay 50% of the cost to replace it. But I couldn't find any. Mariah actually helped me with this research. We didn't find any that pay for new sidewalks other than using CDBG and other types of grants like that.
Okay.
But it would be helpful.
Well, he did mention a few different grants, so I can look at those. But how would you get a resident to pay for a damaged sidewalk if it's not their property? How do they collect that?
I don't know. There were 5 or 6 cities. It's called a 50-50 replacement program. And some of them are reimbursement type programs. So Ogden does it.
So if the
Salt
property
Lake
owner
City.
wants it replaced, it's kind of the idea that the city will pay half of it if they do. That's still
they
a lot of money.
split the cost with
My understanding is that while the property owner doesn't own the sidewalk, they are responsible for maintaining it, and so like shoveling snow off of it. And then if someone were to be injured because you had damaged sidewalk and they sued your property, then your homeowner's insurance. No. How does that work?
I wish that was the case. That's not the case. So the sidewalk is still city property. So if someone goes down and chips a tooth because the sidewalk's up because of a tree that the homeowner planted, it's us.
It's the city.
It is us. Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you drive around, you'll see, and I've been with BJ a little bit on this. If you drive around, you'll see trees that are planted in park strips that raise that sidewalk. Then you have major trip hazards, and trip hazards come back to us.
So what I'm hearing you say is I don't have to shovel my walk. Is that?
I'll let you.
I
be
don't
the
have to
judge.
put my snow boots on in the
do it.
middle of the night and shovel my walk.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that's the interesting part of it, because for the most part, the property owner does own this land until it's given. So the property owner is responsible. So if we're saying that these sidewalks or the missing sidewalks are a liability, the property owner at that time is the owner of the residence. So I think it's like a really careful thing to go down that path and saying that not having sidewalks is a liability, because then is that property owner sued? Does that property owner have to be enforced for the fact that they don't have sidewalks yet? So that's where I think, but once the sidewalks are in, that's because the land has been either given to the city's bought it, or, they've acquired it. So that's the only reason when the city actually owns that land. But I know there's other instances too where the city property extends, but that was the thing I was always wanting to be careful about.
Run into cars park on the shoulder, and then people have to walk into the street because there's no sidewalk. But one thing I just going to throw out there, when you're looking at priorities, 5th East is a busy road, and the speed limit's a little higher, and that sidewalks are hit or miss there. I would like to see that more of as a priority. And then the rodeo grounds, the access, so some people park at the Legacy Center and then walk over to the rodeo grounds because there's not enough parking, and that's dark and hazardous because I know because I walk that way. So, I mean, maybe when we're looking at priorities, consider those kind of things too, that, you know, routes to public events or those, you know, and the rodeos on that street too, and that's utilized more than just for the rodeo, but let's throw that out there.
And I'll just add the 2300 West between 9th North and 3rd North over by Willow Creek and Ascent Academy. I think maybe the mayor's on this already with getting particular price estimates in place, but this is unique in that most of those residents were under the impression the city had promised this to be built along with the development of 2300 West. So I think, and it does hit those top priority marks, being near schools and parks. So as we look at that, I think that should be definitely on the top of the list or near it.
So I'm just sorry. You can go.
Oh no, I on that particular section that you're talking about, I would love if we can get analysis because of the cost. Because I know that there's like infrastructure issues and like all the poles along that part. So I don't think it would be the same cost as $350 per linear foot. I think it'd be much higher. But to your point, I think let's just as a call out, let's just make sure we calculate that one's slightly different.
Yeah, I figured it'll be a little more, and there's fencing height requirements. It's not as simple as just like a dirt driveway.
So I do have some. I'm trying to pull my PowerPoint up again, but it's not working. But we did have some estimates that Brad put together on that, because that road not only, like you mentioned, there's height for the fences. There's also grading. There's a cement wall that has to be installed to level the sidewalk with that. So he estimates on that would be about 1.16 million for that stretch of the road. Over 60% of that probably is for most of that, the fence, the cement wall, the grading, and those kind of things to get that done. But there are also a couple of areas with utility adjustments where storm drains would have to be moved, and then some power issues there as well that probably would have to be adjusted, which is why it's a little bit more for that.
Okay, I'm just going to give my little 2 cents since I brought this up. So I'm a spreadsheet person. I make a spreadsheet for everything. I like to have a priority. I like to have stuff organized. So for me, I would love to have, I don't know if it's possible, maybe it's not, but some kind of algorithm of where we can say like, okay, this is a priority A. These are sub-priorities, right? Like age of the home, possibly age of the residents, possibly near schools. Obviously, we have that. If there's parks, just kind of so we kind of have some way of saying like, oh, you're on the wait list. You're 1,000 whatever down the wait. Like they kind of know like. I'm sorry, we're working on it. We have this plan in place for the city, and we have a priority list, and like you're on our list. You might not be till 2,000, or you might not be till 150, but like we have some kind of method to the madness, or what if you want. Will just I think it might help me just to organize my brain a little bit, and those people who think like me, and maybe that's not possible, but I just in my mind I think. I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking about this for a while, so I think maybe there's a way to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I do have a quick question. You said 5th East. I'm just trying.
Yeah, did I say 5th East? I meant West.
Oh, 5th West.
Because where the speed limit's higher. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Sorry.
I
thought. Did I say that right?
5th East, and I couldn't quite get it.
Any other comments? BJ, do you have anything to add or take away from what we've just discussed? Are you?
No, it's super challenging. I took Mayor Benz around, and I think it's a good opportunity for all of you guys maybe to give us a call and come out and go for a ride with us, just so you can see what we're trying to deal with. I know we're looking at a lot of stuff downtown, but this last year we did 2 sections out on 9th North. There was a child hit out by Ascent Academy, so. To us, that jumped to the top of the priority list, you know what I mean? It wasn't really on our priority list because it was so far out there, but once we found out what was going on, and that's helped with Luke too, is all the parents were dropping off on the opposite side of the road. Even though Ascent Academy has a drop-off that they go around, they just weren't utilizing it. And so it's like we're accommodating what's being done too. So it would be really helpful to come out and just go for a drive and check out some of the stuff, what we're looking at. And I think it helps you explain it a little better.
I recommend that. I did it my first year. And then one thing that it's great learning, but putting in the curb and gutter and the sidewalks, I think it protects our roads. It makes them last longer, right? Because of the drainage and the water seeping in from the side.
Yeah, a long time ago, we tried to just do sidewalks too. But what you have is the road coming off at 2%, and then the sidewalk coming back at 2%. It creates a little waterway there. And then as soon as we do it, people are calling saying, hey, there's a big mud puddle out in front of my house. Can you come and fix it? You know what I mean? So that's another reason that we kind of came up with, if we're going to do sidewalk, we have to do curb and gutter and take care of the drainage issue as well at the time. So,
I would just say for when it comes to that priority list, I would like to see it be citywide. I know we've really focused downtown, but some of my biggest concerns are like 900 North and Trenneman. That you know, right?
That's a really bad spot.
That's like, I think there's like some of those hot spots that you're going to know. Yeah. Where it's like, I think that, you know, there has been such a focus there, and it like that works for grants. Other areas are not going to work for grants for that, but you know, some of these places, I think it would be nice to be able to see that citywide, just to also be fair. You know, with all residents, we're doing something with this, you know, kind of money that does make an improvement to the property. I think we need to make sure that we're showing that we're being fair throughout the city.
Yeah. See, like Dry Creek Elementary, that's a big one too. It's down 1100 West. There's so much farm ground still around it that there's big sections that would be super expensive. There's still ditches that are operating down there. So that gets really challenging too, but that's right around the school, you know what I mean? And so some of those ones, we've just had to kind of step back and say, development is coming, we don't know when, but it makes it super tricky because there's a lot of kids that are walking on the shoulder of the road down there.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And you're weighing the cost benefit analysis and all that. Like I really appreciate that. I just noticed it as I was knocking doors, walking a lot of ways myself over the summer. Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks.
And there's a lot of little, when I was talking to Mayor Benz about it, there's a lot of little onesie-twosie spots around town that the people are super willing to work with us, and then some that aren't. So that's been a big benefit for us too, for our fund, is we approach them, and if they're on board with it, it makes it real easy. You know what I mean, for us to do just a one section or whatever, not so much the whole block. So,
could I just? That's a crucial element he just said, because some people just don't really care. I'm sorry, and you may see those, and you may think why we haven't done them, but there's several places that I can name that unless you want to use your authority, we'll never have that road there. And that's a sad commentary.
Meaning, authority meaning eminent domain.
Yeah.
I tried to, yes.
That was interesting too, because there are places where they do want to perpendicular park. If you take away their shoulder, then they can't. They don't have the parking. They may not have a garage. So, I think for the most part, even some of those where they had originally said that to me have talked to me and said, you know, actually we're getting flooding in our yard. We would love to be able to. So maybe they'll come around. But
any other comments? Thank you. I appreciate that we do stick to the low-hanging fruit, because there's still enough out there that we can get it. There is funds there that I know you use for those as we continue to apply for funds. So thank you. I know you haven't pushed an ounce of snow yet.
Yeah, right.
Please be ready. They tell us it's coming.
That's what they keep saying. I'll
That's
believe it when I
good
see it.
news.
Do we have salt?
Oh, we have lots of salt.
Okay, good.
That won't be an issue. Yeah. We have new snow blades, everything. We're ready. Just let it come.
Thank you. Okay, item 2.E. This is a discussion item of code amendments, so screening requirements for non-residential uses, bordering residential uses, off-street parking requirements reductions, and auto sales in commercial zones. I believe Council Member Stallings, you were on this one. Do you want to start with us?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I should have listed these separately, I suppose, but I'll take them one at a time. That's okay. And I was going to ask him. We've had a busy day today, so it might be helpful if you can pull up the sections of code I want to refer to, but maybe, I don't know, I'll just read them. But so the first one, screening requirements for non-residential uses. So the issue with this one is that in our current code as it's written, if you live in a house, if there's a residential home and it's in a residential district and you're boarding commercial or non-residential use, you're entitled, or the incoming business has to put in the buffering and screening. And the problem is that we have some areas of the city's older parts along Main Street and State Street where there's homes and they're considered legal non-conforming uses. So they were legal at one time, but the zone kind of changed out from under them. So they might be, say, in a mixed-use zone, which is considered non-residential. And we had this last year come up. This is why it's been on my mind, I guess. So what happened is we had a business come in. You wanted to put in business office spaces, no problem at all. You know, not even very impactful on the residents. It could have been a lot worse, right? But because they were in a mixed-use, non-residential zone, they were not entitled to allowed to have the protections. The property owner was not required to put in those protections, the buffering and screening. So we solved it at the time with the development agreement. But there is actually just a really simple fix to this one in my mind. And I welcome questions and input, and then input from staff as well. But so it's Chapter 12 in our development standards, or Development Code development standards. So section B and C, and so what it says right now is when a non-residential zoning district or use sides or backs upon an agricultural or residential zoning district, landscape buffering areas and screening requirements shall be as followed, whatever they are. So the problem is it's explicitly states a residential or agricultural zoning district, not a residential use. So I would just, in section B and C, just would like to add residential zoning district and then or use in there. And I think we want to protect all our residents, you know, no matter what the zoning district says they're in. So any questions or input, or if staff has concerns about that, I'd love to hear about it.
Are you talking about that triangle piece? Is that the piece that you're referring to on State Street?
I don't know if it was a triangle, but it was.
Right next
Is
to
that
the
what it
old-
was? Okay,
the
sorry, I was
old
just trying to think it through and understand.
It was Justin Hammond's property.
Oh, okay.
And I had to talk him into doing a development agreement.
Yeah,
Anyway.
no,
You good
that's
there?
a very easy fix. I know the previous mayor and council had us working on some other things with the fencing. I don't know if we could just do that one simple fix that you're talking about, so that the standards apply whether it's a zone or a use. Do you want to still look at what type of fencing we're requiring? Because right now it just says it has to be 6
Right.
foot side obscuring, which could be a chain link with slats. And I know
Yeah.
there's been some.
So we had talked about, depending on what that non-residential use is, if it's more intense, maybe have higher buffering or screening standards.
Yeah, and then the distance, the amount of buffering that's required. Right now, it's a function of building height, but we talked about maybe for the more intensive zones that there's a bigger buffer. So we have a draft that I just pulled up, but I don't know if you want. Maybe we just tackle the one simple thing. And
Yes.
we could continue
Yeah.
to work on it, or if you want to try and get into the fencing and the physical space that's required, we could look at that at a work session. I could pull up that draft and clean it up and present it
Yeah.
at a future work
So
session.
my preference would be, let's tackle this little bit
Okay.
first and come back to that.
Okay.
But and the reason I wanted this all in a work session is to get council's input, staff's input, and then council direction from the council. So if you guys feel comfortable with that, I'd like.
That's a good change.
We got 3 head nods, so that's
Okay.
good.
We'll just go ahead and that's an easy draft.
Yeah.
We'll get that going through DRC. You'll probably hit planning commission in end of this month, maybe March, and then you'd see it in either late March or April.
Okay.
I would just add, like Kim or staff, if you see any other parts of the code that just doesn't make sense. Like I'm looking at it right now in the development standards adopted in September of 1996. And obviously there's been amendments and changes since then. But if you see anything, I'd rather proactively amend it, because I don't think anybody necessarily likes development agreements, but oftentimes because the code can be ambiguous or somewhat broken, we have to in order for it to make sense right now. But if our code is updated and we fix those problems, then we won't have to do those development agreements as much.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And just kind of an FYI, all of the chapters will have that 1996 date. That was the last time we did a complete overhaul. But yeah, pretty much probably maybe 1 or 2 times a month we'll see code amendments come through. So they'll in each section you'll have amended, and you'll see it's definitely something that we've tried to keep up on. So the 1996 date is a little bit deceiving, that it makes it feel like it's so old, but pretty much the code has been rewritten in little chunks.
Yeah,
over the
there's
years.
a lot of dates of
Yeah.
amended through
Yeah.
the years for different parts of it, but
Yeah.
I know that Ryan is just dying to dig through the entire code and find problems. But
That was actually my first day here, but then
The municipal
the
code.
city
Yeah.
administrator brought in like the three ring binders and set it and said, "This is your first assignment." It's like, woohoo! Yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Took a long time, but we made it.
Yeah.
paralegal.
No, I appreciate your openness to, if we see things, we'll try and be proactive and have been. And just by the way, the reason that the code was written the way it is today was the thought process at the time was, well, hey, if they're zoned commercial but they're still living there in their home, but they need to know that this area will probably change, and should we make somebody put improvements in next to a home that may not, they may develop the next year and they turn their property into commercial. But I see where, it's really just a policy decision of and I agree, we probably just need to protect, if they want to stay there 1 more year or 100 more years, we should be looking out for the residential.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
my spiel, but then I remembered I had a thought just about that. So I'm wondering if you want to put this in code, or if there's another avenue for this, but maybe granting an exception if all the adjacent property owners agree to it. Like if they know hey, I'm going to sell this anyway, you don't need to do it.
Yeah.
I'd be
Okay,
good with that.
so the ability, like if we have something in writing from the adjacent owner that
Yeah.
says, you know what, we're good, we don't really want the fence, we're going to move in
yeah,
X number of months or year or whatever. Okay, yeah, we can put that as part of it.
that's what I was thinking. Okay. The next one, off-street parking requirement reductions. So this is, let me find the section of code. This is Chapter 37 Design Standards, the parking section 37.060, I 1 and 2. Okay, so all right, so I'll tell you what happened. I was listening to Planning Commission meeting, I think the first one of the month, and there's the property that is next to, on Main Street, next to Lehi Bakery on the corner. Right now it's an existing parking lot that many people use to go to those businesses on that street. And so the property owner wants to come and develop and put in offices, 3-story offices. And they had no parking in their concept plan. So they presented the concept plan to the Planning Commission, and even the DRC comments, the engineering wrote, "Where's the parking for this building? There should be adequate space provided for parking." And the park said, "The proposed development lacks adequate parking to support a 3-story building. The current plan would eliminate one of the few existing parking lots in the area. With 64 offices included in the design, it's unclear where the parking for 64 vehicles would be accommodated, especially given there's already limited availability on Main Street and surrounding side streets. This raises serious concerns about the impact on local infrastructure and accessibility." So I'm not the only one who kind of had a panic attack over this. And so, Kim pointed out in that meeting, I think that right now in our historic commerce district and in our mixed use district, we have no minimum parking requirements. That I guess the Planning Commission is to be guided by the parking requirements in the parking table, which I calculated they would need 72 stalls. So and then, you know what, the property owner wanted 64. He one parking stall for each office in the building, which contemplates, I guess, no clients or customers going there. So what they're looking at is on-street parking around the north and, on the west side of the building, north and south of Main Street, and then using Legacy Center parking and leasing that to the property owner. So this concerned me a lot, and I get the rationale. Two things is that we have some really old buildings that were built long before we had parking requirements, right? I think Kim pointed out we had hitching posts and horses back then. Yeah. But we have new buildings coming in, and I guess we still don't require the parking for them. But I just feel that we want to encourage development, but by not requiring parking or putting it a block away, we're going to discourage people coming to our downtown area. Because I know, I use that parking lot, and they have a right to develop it. I'm not saying that, but I use that parking lot if I take grandkids to get a donut at Lehi Bakery. I'm not going to do that if I park a block away and walk with them that far. So it concerned me because they did, well, we can put some more parking on the south side of Main Street. Well, you have businesses there too that need parking, right? Where's the parking for the existing businesses now that that's gone? So I don't want to grant these exceptions trying to encourage development when it not requiring parking is probably going to discourage commerce from coming to that area. So I would like to look into this some more. I don't have a proposed code change, but I think, I think maybe we ought to start requiring parking in the downtown area. I don't like the idea of leasing Legacy Center parking because that parking was built with public funds. It's for these public amenities, and he's going to take up a big chunk of that. And they talked about, the shared use idea, and Legacy Center, it's mostly after school or evenings, and offices during the day, but we're forgetting summertime, and there's a lot of kids there during the day as well. So thoughts or inputs or in questions or staff
I agree,
thoughts?
Michelle. I think, and this kind of goes back to the downtown revitalization plan, which specifically calls for more, I guess, for less parking, right? More restricted parking. And so I think we need to look at it holistically for the downtown area. And I know that different parts of the city are going to have different, characters, but downtown in particular, it's very difficult to park already. And so I want those businesses to succeed. And so I think for that example that you used from Planning Commission, I agree. I think we should look at that in more detail.
I just want to make sure I'm on the same page in understanding the code. So on the page 106, it talks about what you said, that for everything that's pre-existing, there are no minimum parking requirements. However, in reviewing and approving new uses within the mixed use and historic commerce districts, the zoning administrator, review departments, and the planning commission shall be guided by the parking requirements as contained in table 37.090. Parking requirements for the mixed use and historic commerce districts shall be approved by the zoning administrator, review departments, and planning commission. So is it that you want to have it specified exactly what those are going to be? Are they not specified for new development in those areas? Or what do we need to, what would be the fix?
Yeah, this really is a tricky issue because you have an old, 150-year-old development pattern that if you require today's parking standards, you'll just lock up development. I don't think anybody, because you literally couldn't build your lot would all have to be parking. You know what I mean? You might have one little 1,000 square foot building, and it's just going to be hard to park it. And so that's where the way the code is written, they could have, they could have no parking, which we have several of these buildings that have they don't own any parking and if we said, well, you have to have parking, then they just wouldn't exist anymore. Or, the planning commission could say, well, normally if this were a brand new development in a typical commercial zone, you would have, 72 parking spaces, but because you're downtown and we're going to try and accommodate as much as we can, we want to see new development downtown, but we know you can't meet our standards, so where should we meet in the middle? It gives them that flexibility. It says, hey, let's at least consider what would your normal parking requirements be, and is there some way that we can at least identify some, but we're not going to put the full requirements on, is the way today's code is.
So right now, I think you said in the planning commission that technically they don't have to put in any parking.
That's correct, yeah. If they said we have no room for any parking, but we want to see new development, we could approve it without any parking, technically.
So maybe we can look at, this is a 3-story office building. Is this the right place or something like that? And right now they're allowed to, right? It's mixed use, and they're entitled to whatever the code says at the time. But it's, do we give up all part, Yeah.
I think the long term, and it's in our civic master plan, we have a couple of parking structures that would, I don't know, I guess we'd have to figure out if that's private or private-public partnership or public. But I think that is really the only long-term solution, is we've got to figure out somewhere to put a parking garage.
And I don't even know if that's really a solution, because, it's just with Stack here and the HRZ, the biggest expense is this parking structure. It's hugely more expensive than on-street parking.
Yeah, I think they're 30 or 40,000 per stall.
Yeah,
so it adds up super.
You think
fast.
Sidewalks are expensive?
Yeah,
Come on.
Let's do structure.
So,
parking.
and maybe in the historic commerce district, we need to look more closely at what uses are allowed there that are more accommodating to less parking or the on-street parking.
Or more of a high turnover versus office where you come and park all day. Yeah, that's a valid something to look into. And we could we did our own, just as staff, we have a drone and we flew it several times, different times of day, different days of the week. And we know where all of our public parking is, and so we took drone photos and went out and did some counts as well, just walking through parking lots. How much is still available? What's our capacity? We could redo that. I think we've eaten some of that up because some of it went to the Porter's Place building. They're actually leasing some of those stalls, like you mentioned, that were built as an overflow to the Legacy Center. But we could update that study. Maybe we look and see, I think at the time it showed at the peak, it was 85% at capacity. There were still some, and that was like junior jazz night or whatever, like the worst case scenario. And I think generally, most average days you had 70% utilized and 30% vacant. But anyways, we could redo that, see where we're at. But yeah, I do like the idea of maybe we revisit what uses are allowed. Maybe we restrict it more to the retail where there's higher turnover. I do think we can get creative on some of our side streets, like we did on Center Street First East, where we have the angled on-street parking. As a city, we could use our own right-of-way to maximize, create additional parking that doesn't exist today with some of those angled solutions. So there's a couple of ways to approach it.
Just a point of clarification, this stops at Planning Commission? This decision. And so maybe one way of solving it is actually bringing it towards council for an additional layer of eyes and discussion. That is also something we could do, have that double check.
That was my first thought, because they're not accountable to the voters.
Exactly.
So they're not going to hear about this.
Exactly.
When they find out their parking to Lehi Bakery's gone, they're
exactly
pitchforks.
Yeah. So I would be open to doing that.
And and that's my thought. But Kim, maybe help me. So I looked into that because, my pet peeves, But from what my research is, it's actually an administrative decision, which the Planning Commission is more their kind of thing and less ours. Ours is more legislative. and that the fix would have to be in our code. But can we bring it back to us? But then again, if it meets the code, and this is a problem I think with the Planning Commission, and they also in mixed use, they're allowed 30% reduction, TODs without even the transit there, it's a 50% reduction. And they are always feel that they have to grant it. It's like up to a whatever percent reduction, but they're always like, yeah, we better, you know, and I get it. And with conditional use permits, I get the concern there. So where would the fix be?
Can I say something? According to the Utah League of Cities and Towns, they say conditional uses are very maybe used, but can be very, very tricky. It can be very, very tricky. And some cities don't have them. They eliminate them because of the problems with them.
I'm for that.
I second that. The way that we've received training is really, and it's hard because when you look at a conditional use, it's permitted with conditions. And so that's what makes it tricky because just in my experience, when I was on the Planning Commission, Craig would chime in. If we tried to do any conditions, he would chime in and be like, not allowed, not allowed. Oh, that's an infringement. And so then the planning commissioners are like, well, I guess it's permitted. Good luck, you know. And so it's one of my pet peeves, speaking of those, is conditional use permits because they do cause the residents confusion, the commission confusion. And anyway, Kim knows. Yeah.
So is that something that come to the council, and as a council, could we deny, like, no, you're not getting any parking exemption, or? Yeah. But if there's no minimum requirement, I don't know how.
Yeah, I can understand. You're wondering if it stays as an administrative decision, how can we still give you some discretion to say no if it's like, well, you're way underparked? Yeah, I think we could look at how we write it. You know, maybe we say, you know, at a minimum you have to have 25% of our standard parking, or you know what I mean. I think, and then it gives you some discretion above that. But
then if it comes back, so I'm more comfortable with fixing it in the code than allowing the discretion to, you know. But to be fair, I think there's somewhere where a traffic engineer or something has to look at it. There has to be a parking study done. So there's that. But honestly, as a council member or even a planning commissioner, I don't know if we're as smart as Lauren or Brad or, you know, would know what the parking requirements should be, right? We don't have that expertise or knowledge. So that's why I kind of want to take out the discretionary. But
and maybe that, you know, if we're going to amend the code, that could be something that we add. We have it for some of the other parking situations, but just say for anything in the mixed use, unless you meet our standards, you have to have a traffic or a parking study, because right now it is very discretionary.
Yeah.
So at least tell them, hey, show us how you think it will work from a qualified traffic engineer. Give us a parking study. Show us why you think less would still work. Yeah.
And the problem with TODs and mixed use isn't truly mixed use at this point, right? I mean, this office building can just do office, and there's no residential requirement, right? Yeah. And then we've had the other problem where it's all residential, no commercial. And so the basis for a parking reduction there is the idea that it is residential and commercial in the shared space kind of thing. Some people will be there when others are leaving kind of thing. And then the TOD also, we don't have the transit. So if we had it, a parking reduction would be reasonable, but now we're allowing it without mass transit there. That's a whole nother thing probably, but
which is something I wanted to add to the agenda for March. I didn't bring up, but just looking at the mixed use coding and I think there should be a minimum % requirement of commercial if we're saying it's mixed use.
Wasn't the prior council working on that? Yeah, and Paige and I put that forward, so I think we already, with Mayor Johnson being aware, but yeah, I don't know where that was at. I think you did send us some on that too,
I think
with the same thing, because it didn't have the same requirements that like TOD did.
Yeah, I think we all saw that
Yeah.
problem there and
Yeah.
wanted that fixed. So
That's
I
another
think
item
it
we
would be
can
great
bring.
to keep working on that.
So maybe a work session item for March if the council's
I'll be your
amenable to that. Okay.
Send me an email.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what I'm proposing, I think, for now. And we can continue on this, but looking at the uses in our historic commerce district, first of all, maybe going that route and requiring some minimum parking, looking at on-street parking as well as off-street parking, I guess. There is that alley behind there, so I'm just wondering if there's space behind there. But anything else, or do you guys agree with that? Or
I think that having parking requirements is important because instead of us supplementing parking with Legacy Center or with public ramp parks or whatever, I mean, I actually frequent a business down there probably twice a week with my kids have classes, and I park in the Legacy Center parking. But my vehicle has either been hit or I have struggles with those poles with little kids getting in and out of my car. So yeah. I just think that we probably should relook at the parking requirements.
My only thing too, I'd be concerned with the one that has been brought up, that building, is that if it's a new construction is eliminating parking, that not only would they have to account for theirs, but because I don't know what the plan is. I guess it's maybe the buildings around are paying for parking in that area. That I don't know how that's working with the shared parking. That gets kind of, not only do they need to provide for their own building, but if they're taking away parking, how do we do? I don't know. Like that becomes
Double.
like you're now
double-
making them cover parking for other areas that they've eliminated. I don't know.
so, Kim, can you clarify in that meeting? It seemed like they were presenting a concept plan, but they were granted the parking reduction, or I mean, is it done or?
Yeah, the concept was approved, but they would have to work with Marlin. I think, I'm trying to remember, it's been too long ago, if they did ask for a parking study. I don't remember if they required that as part of the concept. I'd have to go back and look.
And if I can add, concept plans also kind of frustrate me too, because it gives the applicant, the pro of it is that it gives the applicant a direction to head. The con is that if then the city comes and says, well, we actually think this should be different, they can go back to the concept plan and be like, but you didn't say it on that day, so we don't have to. So they're really tricky, and many times I've asked him, like, why do we do this? And usually it's so that the business or the applicant can get funding from a bank, so they can say they gave me somewhat of a green light. But anyway, it's hard because, if they've already given a green light to the concept, how do we come back? And you just have to hope you have a reasonable applicant.
And just want to throw this out there just so you can correct me if I'm not right. My understanding is that when there's leased parking, it has to be a perpetual easement, with the county. And can that ever be changed, or is that, perpetual means?
Oh, you mean like when they lease it from the city?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in our agreements that we made with the Porter's Place, it does give us the latitude if we needed to move it or renegotiate. I haven't read that contract in quite a while. That was done 5 or 6 years ago, but
So it
think
can't
we
be
did leave
changed.
ourselves,
Yeah.
the ability to change the location. Yeah.
Okay. Just wondered about that.
Any other comments on the parking? I think it's important to understand too, because we're also going to force a bunch of traffic and parking onto our side streets. Some of those side streets, speaking of sidewalks, don't have great sidewalks. So back to the preliminary comment.
Original problem.
Michelle, I know this is the last item is yours. It is almost 6 o'clock. We do have spillover for tomorrow. We have posted to handle these. We can handle these tomorrow at the back end of our council meeting.
Can I do the last one and we can come back to the auto sales? I think the last one will be short and sweet.
Sure. We'll proceed with that one, then we'll bring auto
Is that
sales
all
back.
right? We can get it done and not have to do it tomorrow.
Yep, sounds great.
So we just changed the area plan to allow short-term rentals at Cold Springs, so that got the wheels turning. And did a lot of digging, talked to Kim about this, but transient room tax, or what is our budget called? Lodge tax? I wrote it down somewhere. Our budget calls it something else, but it's called Dean's here. Innkeeper fee. There we go. Okay. Yes, talk to Dean about this. The city does charge it on hotels. And it's applicable to short-term rentals as well because they're considered lodging. And then on top of that, I found out that they're charged sales tax for some of the things. So it's not significant for the city. I got all excited because I know the county loves that kind of thing, but it's like 1% to the city and 4.5% to the county. This is like we have a commissioner who loves hotels, I think. They get a lot more than we do. And then the state gets, I think, 1.7%. And this is not something that the host or landlord or whatever would pay. It would be charged to the visitors, I guess, or the renters. But I would, it's not much, but it would help a bit, maybe, but help keep the short-term rentals in compliance with state law. So my suggestion or thought was just to, in our application process, what I wrote down, just require that we have certain requirements for the application. One of them is to get a business license, and maybe just require that they also get a sales tax ID number, and then maybe put on, you guys have a great website, information center's not here, but they have links to different things where they can go to find these things. So that's great. So maybe just add something on that application that'll take them to where the state explains what they need to charge their visitors. So I think not a big thing, but hopefully helpful.
Dean, can I ask if I rent a room through Verbo, my fee goes to Verbo. Verbo already pays that, correct?
Yeah. We saw, they give us a list every month of who's paid, and we do get money from Verbo or Airbnb. Yeah.
So the large ones that have contracts with their
if they're
residents that are
going through a
running it.
company, I think that's going to get paid. It's just if they're not,
Okay.
they need to be.
And my understanding is they still have to report it. They have reporting requirements, but I mean that's to the Utah Tax Commission that they do
Who's
that.
the like Airbnb?
The owners of the short-term rental. But I don't know.
Basically, when they're filling out their sales tax return, depends on your type of business. It's different.
Yeah.
So every type of business. So if their sales tax return is properly classified, it'll automatically charge them that.
Okay.
When they pay
I just want to make it easy for people who want to do these, so they can understand what their obligations are.
Yeah.
That's the intent. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Any questions on any of that?
I think it sounds fair. I think.
I would like to talk to our business licensing and make sure that we're not, are we increasing red tape on the small business? I just don't know those answers.
It will be. I mean, it won't cost them anything, but it will cost time and attention and effort. So it will, but it's law, that they're supposed to do this. So, but this, again, we're presenting in a work session to come back and staff can have, look at it. And I do apologize. I was hoping to get here earlier to talk to the information center about it, but the LPC meeting went late.
Yeah, no problem. I think that's what I would just want to know more information on, just being really sensitive to them. Like if they're using Airbnb and VRBO, it's probably automatically happening, but if they don't and they advertise on KSL or something, then this would help them solve this problem. But I would just love to hear from our business licensing group before we make a decision. So my only thoughts.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, any other thoughts on that?
Mr. Mayor, I think with one item left, I'm good for another 10 minutes. I don't want to force anyone else to stay here, but with one item left, and I think we have residents here ready to listen to this particular thing that's left, I think would be paying respect to the sacrifice they've made to be here.
Sure, we can go ahead then. I'm fine with that, other than the bio break is close, so go ahead.
If you're okay.
Yeah, I push through, get it done. Absolutely. So the other one is auto sales in the commercial zone, and it's come up through with a development agreement, and we've had a resident come out and reach out to all the council members. And so I wanted to bring it again for all the council to weigh in and give input and direction for staff. My thoughts on this one is, and I know a lot of the council members have done research and talked to residents about this, so expect some good input. I'm absolutely fine with including in the commercial zone as a permitted use. I do know that we have some current requirements for auto sales, and I've looked at all those, and I do have some concerns about them. One of them is I think there's a conflict between our the table of uses, like and the text in our parking requirements. So one in the table, it bases the parking requirements on the gross showroom area, but in the text in our development standards, it's based on the amount of inventory. So I think there needs to be some clarification there. I prefer the parking to be based on the amount of inventory. And I know right now we have a 1 acre requirement, and I've heard talk that maybe bringing that down. I'm good, and I've looked at other cities. A lot of them do have a minimum acreage requirement. Tooele just in October last year allowed one. It was on 0.16 acres. So, there's a big range there. And I know Rachel, I brought this up with Rachel, and she's done some research and looked at some existing auto sales in Lehi, and she could probably go over this. But
just what we currently have. We have several existing car dealerships that are not even half an acre. Farmington has the half acre requirement, Farmington, Utah. But we have current car dealerships that are not even half an acre. That I just wonder what the intent is, I guess, with the acreage requirement. I think it looks pretty, but is that is that a valid reason to have a requirement? Because Rachel thinks it looks pretty, probably not. So I don't know. That's something that I question. Just with we have what I looked at Monaco auto sales is 0.25 acres, Cartown's 0.29. Bones, Lehigh Motors, 0.22. Anyways, there's several ones that we currently have. I'm guessing that they're around because of development agreements, but I don't know. You probably can answer that better than me. But
so the size of the lot, is there justification for that regulation? The other one is on, this is Chapter 12 Development Standards J1, I think. The maximum number of vehicles for sale shall be identified as part of the approved process and shall be determined on site on a site-specific case-by-case basis. Again, what is the criteria for doing that? To me, it should be, how big is your lot? Do you have what meets state code? Because I understand they have to have an office and different things. Three. And then maybe go from, there's the drive aisle has to be 24 feet wide or something, and the stalls have to be a certain size also. But I'm just wondering if we could, and this might be where the case-by-case thing comes in, but specify in there that we're looking at the size of the lot, what will fit on there, look at your building footprint, and then determine the inventory based on that, the size of the lot, and how many stalls can fit in there, meeting all those requirements. Those are my thoughts.
Am I good to chime in?
Yeah.
So I spoke with someone. It's funny. I got sworn in, and this was one of the first conversations I had in December. A auto sales owner who left Lehi because of the requirements and how frustrated they were, and that it made me realize, we definitely got to start looking at this. But at the same time, I think from everything I've done in the conversations I've had, it's almost like the requirements that we have are incompatible with the business model, and therefore making it hard for a business model to succeed. So my efforts have been to find how we can get these mitigations in place that reflect the business model in a way where they can actually function and do their job. At the same time, I've met with a bakery owner in the commercial zone in Lehi, and when I started talking to them about how would you feel about this change, they were terrified because they were like, I know that car lots just blow up inventory, and where will my customers park? So I want to be, I think there's just that really fine balance, right? Of, okay, how do we make sure that the business model can thrive and then also making sure that when it comes into commercial, those who are already there don't see any negative impacts. And I've been working on some of that, but I'm just not there yet. And I would, happy to work and get more input on some of those things. But that's kind of where I'm at, and I hope we can find resolution.
Sorry. So you said a bakery was concerned, so like overflow parking, that the parking would spill into their space.
They were particularly concerned that, like when I showed like the commercial zone, they're like, whoa, so it could go right there. And they're like, well, usually cities have auto malls and there's just inventory everywhere. And so they were like, well, was there just going to, like, where will my customers park? Because they all kind of share parking or, and not that and again, so early on, I didn't have all these answers for them yet, but I could see them being concerned because that particular use does have an explosion of inventory, and they don't make pens that can be easily put in boxes in a warehouse, right? They make cars that take up space. And so I think that was what I took away from that conversation is those already in the commercial space just want to make sure that if this comes in, there are mitigations so that they don't have negative impacts, which I think makes total sense. I just haven't found that answer yet.
So if a private property owner owns their parcel of land, unless they have a shared parking agreement, and I know it's a problem because I know other places use parking when they're not allowed to, right? And that goes on to the business owner that is, suffering that negative impact to put up signs, no parking signs, or towing, calling towing. So what I'm looking at is you look at that parcel, what can fit on the parcel to have whatever number of parking spaces, and that would limit their inventory. And then we would have to enforce it, but we got a code enforcement officer that left. But, so yeah, somebody will always take advantage of that, and we will always have to enforce the rules, which is disappointing. But again, I don't see.
I guess my concern is that the rules are prohibitive on the business model because the business model is all based in like inventory. Like car dealerships, from my understanding, they sell about 30 to 50% of what their inventory is every month. And this is me learning, right? I'm not an expert in auto sales. So in order for them to make the amount they have to make to pay property taxes and their employees and everything, their model is designed off of large inventory because to get to that point, right? So I just don't want to put mitigations in that prohibit the business model from thriving. That being said, the other side of that coin is we already have businesses and uses in that commercial zone that worry because their inventory is by nature large and takes up a lot of space, right? So I think there's a common ground here. I think we can find the solution, but that's where I was kind of at in my head of just feeling that push and pull between the two uses and things like that.
So can I say something? So I looked up state requirements for a dealer license. They said the site must be sufficiently bounded by fence, chain, posts, or otherwise marked to definitely indicate its boundaries. So in my mind, I think just like any business, they have their property and they can park what they have on their property, but if it infringes on another property's right? So, so like they can put their inventory on their property, and I would think that it wouldn't infringe on a neighboring commercial space. The state requirements are also enough display space for at least 3 vehicles, which is, nothing, right? If you have less than 3, you can just sell privately, right? You don't even need to have a dealer license. And there must be a permanent enclosed building or structure large enough to accommodate the office of the dealership. It must provide a safe place to keep the books. And we have some requirements now, but I don't know, maybe it's what we need to do is we need to look at the code as is and adjust it to the commercial area and look at what their, current code requirements are. I think, we have some 10-foot landscape setback. I think on some of the current auto dealerships that there are, we don't have that setback. Maybe they were done through a development agreement, and I don't know, is the 10-foot setback, is that requirements that are standard for the commercial zone area? Is that just for auto?
Yeah, no,
seems like a
that's
law
across the board. Any commercial property, your typical requirement is 10 feet.
Okay.
Just to separate so you don't have parking right up to the sidewalk.
Okay.
Just kind of a buffer.
I mean, just thinking about it as, again, the business model, right? That's their inventory. They're trying to advertise. Just like when Target et al. Came and talked to the planning commission about the size of the sign and how they want this big sign, and this is really important for them, and they actually didn't come before city council, and they said, this is a huge thing for us. We want it to be, however, did they want it 60 feet? I don't remember.
Like 75.
It was very high because they were insisting that would hurt their business. And the planning commission was able to go down in feet, but it's still, from someone who drives that road every day, that's still a pretty big sign there. And the justification was because it was their business. So in my mind, I think we have to think similarly about something like this. And, we want to be business friendly, trying to establish a small business association, all that stuff. Also being respectful of the neighboring commercial areas. I don't know if there's a compromise.
I think we can.
But if there's going to be some huge sign by my window at night because someone needs to advertise Target, I think we can find some other compromises. So,
and I think all business models are limited by existing conditions, right? So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we've got to have the dedicated parking space. It's got to fit in, right? And so whatever size lot you have, I think it will be limited by what you can legally and safely fit in there. And we have, I don't even know what the code is, but beyond city code that talks about roads and requirements and that sort of thing, just to make sure you can get safely in and out, or public safety in there if they needed to. So yeah, I think there will be limitations, and then it's up to the property owner to see if it's doable or not. But I think we can make some adjustments to make it more doable, if it's reasonable. If there's regulations that aren't, if there's, like Rachel pointed out, if we don't have good reasons for a regulation, maybe we should look at those. But the direction I would like to go is to not have a minimum size, but maybe limit the inventory based on parking requirements.
Well, I would just say, like, the parking requirements, for me, conceptually, it should be about public safety and ensuring that other businesses aren't negatively impacted by someone's business model. And I think auto sales it's very unique anyway. It's not like, a bakery where you just have kind of a regular retail in and out customer base. Obviously, you have a lot of cars on the lot. Even the setback from the roads, I think it just doesn't fit as great with an auto dealership. So where can we cut? And Kim, interested to hear your thoughts as well. Like, for auto sales in particular, what can we do to cut some of these stipulations that, again, don't affect public safety, don't infringe on other property rights, to make it easier for business owners to set these up?
Yeah, I think so. On the inventory, it is all about trying to, how many cars can we fit on here? So in our current code, we actually say, a typical stall size is 9 by 20, but we say you can go 8. If you've ever looked at a used car dealership, you know, it's sometimes you have to really be careful getting in and out of the cars because it's all about how much can we display. Another exception, I can't remember if it's in the code, I'd have to look it up, but on the Porsche Audi dealership, we allowed tandem, so they could pull one in behind it, because it just gets that much more inventory out closer to where people can see it. So I guess we could craft it however you want, but do we want to allow some flexibility? I guess is kind of where you're going. Can we give a little bit of flexibility? I think we could, maybe the parking for customers and employees needs to be our standard, but the inventory stalls could be reduced so they can really kind of squish it in there. I do think it's a good practice to have some separation from the sidewalk, just because you get bumper overhang, and it looks very, sterile if you have road, sidewalk, and then right into the parking and the display, so there's no green or anything to kind of break that hard surface up. But it is aesthetics, but that's part of zoning is, what do we want our city to look like? And I think that's part of the reason that, way back, this probably goes back 15 years or more, they worried that you might have a lot of these little cute homes that get taken over. If you have a quarter of an acre and then they want to put a car dealership in, the house becomes the office, and then the front lawn goes away and it's just cars. And, it can deter from what the Main Street especially looks like, and that was where they were most concerned. So that's why we got to where we were with the 1 acre. They figured with 1 acre you have ample room for your inventory, employee parking, all that kind of stuff. But is 1 acre the magic number? I don't. Or we could just say, yeah, there's no minimum. We remove that, but it's just based on, here's our standards for your inventory, and everything else needs to meet typical standards for your parking, and let that govern, and just make sure that it doesn't spill over. Say you cannot have inventory on public streets or on adjacent properties, things like that.
Or could we do no lot size requirement, do a lot size requirement but no inventory requirement, to allow the business owner to regulate the inventory themselves? But by having a minimum lot size, we know, we can kind of figure out, this is probably what this can hold. It's just an idea, literally just talking and thinking out loud.
I'm wondering how, if you have the park strip and the sidewalk, about how many feet is that? Typically, is that 6?
Our standard park strip is 7 feet now, but a lot of this is going to be probably on existing roads, which have a 4 or 5 foot park strip. But yeah, so you have the curb, the park strip, then the sidewalk, and then our code requires an additional landscape setback from the back of the sidewalk.
An additional 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think it's actually 20 and then 10 to property lines.
Wow.
So,
okay. That, to me, that seems a little bit much, or a lot. It seems a bit when I think of the ones I've driven best in Lehi, that might be our current requirement, but there's all those existing ones that don't have it, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of legal non-conforming. Yep.
Yeah. And I do think that we might cut down on some overreach into the just kind of other commercial areas if we do kind of say it is on the main arterial area, maybe like Main Street, State Street, or kind of those larger roads that are coming up. But looking at the map, we mostly have commercial on those roads anyway, so maybe that doesn't need to be a requirement. It's just an idea. I don't know. Because if you are trying to bring in cars with, I don't know. This is new to me.
Well, I like Councilmember Lockhart's kind of suggestion where it should be up to the property owner to somewhat manage, based on a principle of, can a fire truck get through the slot, right? And auto sales, I've never looked at an auto dealership and thought about aesthetics, right? I think it's just a very unique business concept, and the whole point is to put your product out for people to see it. And so I don't know if this could be like a sub-commercial code where it's a little more geared toward smaller business owners that want to have a lot, right? Whether they have 2 or 3 cars or they have, 20 to 30 cars. The development agreement we just approved for 2300 West and Main Street, I mean, they already have probably 80 cars in that lot, right? And it's great. I mean, if you want to buy a car, you know where to go, and they're parked all the way up to the sidewalk, which I don't have any problem with that. I don't think aesthetics for an auto dealership is necessarily the same as aesthetics for residential development or an office space, something like that. So I think however we go about it, we should amend it to, again, prioritize public safety and property rights, and not as much on the aesthetics side, and let the property owner kind of self-regulate. And if they're not, then again, we have a code enforcement officer.
I think we need to be careful. So just remember, this can go, if we change it, in any commercial area. So you got to think about the impact on surrounding uses too. And I'm not really comfortable with just, so are you saying a minimum lot size and then they can figure it out? I just know that there are some bad actors that would push it and make it not safe. And it would be hard, unless it's clear in code that they're in violation, to do anything about that, right? So that's, I guess, just my caution.
Yeah,
I would prefer to go your size, what can fit well safely, and I appreciate the thought of reducing things where we can. So yeah, that's just my caution there.
Yeah, I think there should be like, I don't know if it's a ratio, right? I don't want to have it so down to the specific number of, whether it's lot size or if it's number of inventory. If we get too caught up in that, I know it's more clear that way, but I think every business operates a little differently and their property is a little different. So I think having a principle-based approach to it might make more sense, at least for this. But saying that, playing my own devil's advocate, it's hard across an entire city, where it may work just fine in one part of the city with one business. It may not work in another part of the city. So we just have to take that into consideration.
So here's an idea that I got from Farmington again. They have a code that differentiates small auto dealerships versus Class A auto sales. So instead of just doing one code for all auto sales, they actually have a small one, and they have whatever you call Class A. So, it seems like we're kind of, because we are thinking, are we thinking of, the huge one that's two acres, right? Or are we thinking of the little one on Main Street? I don't know. Maybe
I like that.
That might be a unique way to think about it. Just an idea.
So Kim he's great at research, so maybe can look at some different ideas about how to go forward.
Definitely look at farming.
There's lots of ideas, and I think for me, I do like what James said. Let's reduce the regulations where we can, but also keep safety in mind.
I do think, for drive aisles and things like that, there are fire code minimum standards, 24 foot for drive aisles and things like that. So just to make sure they can access the site for fire, ambulance, and things.
I think of things later. The tandem parking, is that allowed because of a certain agreement? And if you allowed that, would you have to look at, would they need more, like a larger drive aisle, or you'd have to have room, right? If you want to get to the front car.
Yeah, I think if you want to drive the front car, they have to back the one behind it out. But
that's what the lot techs do.
What's
right?
That?
The lot techs will, if you want to test drive a car, they're going to move cars around and play Tetris a little bit with them. But yeah.
But is that a special agreement or something with?
No, I'm trying to remember. It was when the site plan was originally approved. I remember it might have been some kind of an exception, but not a development agreement.
An exception.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't. Our codes changed a little bit since that that was one of our first, I think it was our first new car dealership in the whole city.
Okay.
I mean, that was
So it
15
might have been
years
different.
ago. I think these
Okay.
have been tweaked a little bit since then.
And is there any problem with that?
No.
No issues have come up? Okay.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Yeah, my only feedback is like I think it needs to fit within the surrounding area. So and then leave it up to the developer, the property owner, of kind of like how they're going to lay it out. If they're able to have the setbacks that kind of match, they're able to show that they have the customer parking, the employee parking, that it's not bleeding over, and they have, ways to show that they can get a certain amount of inventory on. I kind of feel that's on them to see what they can get creative with, rather than saying you're only allowed to do this. And I don't know that it needs to have additional setbacks beyond what we would require of other commercial. I think it just needs to kind of fit where it's going in and match. So that would be my suggestion.
And I would just say that I think there's a difference, like Heather said, there's a difference between like neighborhood commercial, thinking of a couple of the auto lots on Main Street out by Veterans Park, versus hard commercial, right? I think there probably should be more stipulations on residential commercial, because you're neighbors with other homes and people that sleep at night nearby. But I think I like that. Was it Farmington that does it?
Yeah,
It has two different.
Farmington has small auto dealership and Class A auto sales.
Yeah.
Differentiation. But I mean, even maybe a 2-foot setback. But yeah, exactly what fits, I'm not exactly sure. I think we're also talking about commercial, not residential commercial, right? Just the commercial. Yeah.
And right now it's in heavy commercial,
Yeah.
and then we also have regional commercial and things like that that have incorporated that Class A that I think is what Farmington's referencing. Like that would be my assumption, like the Audi dealership and things like that. But I think all of this is great. Great. I don't know if we're going to solve it tonight, but it's good.
Kim, does that give you some road to run on?
Yep.
Because that was a 10-minute discussion that went 24 minutes. But anyway.
Minutes, so we won't be here tomorrow. Just keep
Not-
that in mind.
we will actually be here tomorrow. I look forward to
Well,
it.
24 minutes less is what I'm saying.
Just to clarify, do you want us to take a little bit of a run and come back at a work session and say, okay, here's some draft code that you can then play around with?
Yeah, I think that would give us some
Okay.
road to run on.
Before we just start assuming we know exactly.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, it might take a few tries before we hit the target.
I think that'd be appropriate.
And part of this is the Small Business Council that we're setting up. Marlon did a really good job on researching other cities across the country that have done something like this. And this is what they're going to do, is be able to research, to be able to inform the city government on what regulations just aren't working or don't make sense, or add to costs that don't need to be there. But it also helps us communicate to the business community certain policies and standards. So hopefully, just for the council's awareness, once Marlon kind of finishes up the red lines on that, we'll push it out to the rest of the council, and I look forward to your feedback. But it should be in place. Hopefully, we can pass it in March and then start getting it into effect by summer at the latest.
And I think if you have something for a work session, if you can send it out when the agenda comes out, that'd be super awesome.
The drafts.
So let's talk agendas for a second, because I was going to hold this till tomorrow night, but I won't hold it till tomorrow night. Agenda items. So if you have an agenda item, we're going to. I've talked to some staff today. If you have an agenda item that needs to go in the work session or city council meeting, send them to me directly with Jason on it, and we will get it on the agenda. If I send you back I don't like this, then you're going to need another council member, and then you would go directly to Tisha to get that on there, okay? So if for some reason you want something, send it to me, send what you're thinking, and we'll get it on the agendas. That way our agendas are a little better planned going out. The other thing is remember we've asked staff to give us a week, but we've done real good in the last couple weeks adding stuff at the last minute. So it gets difficult when we add stuff at the last minute for them to give. So remember, we've asked them to give us a week in advance. It's very difficult when we give them a week and then we are adding stuff at the last minute. So be respectful of that as you think about it. If not, we'll bump it to the next one, which isn't the worst case scenario. So heads up on that. But I do appreciate the great input that's going into this. I feel like we're really on our right foot moving forward. So just a heads up, kind of moving forward to help us stay organized and in the game. I'll take a motion. Any other comments tonight that we need, Council? Heather?
So maybe just circle back on the mixed use, because I've been working with Kim on code, send some suggestions over. Those who I was working with are no longer here. So I don't know if, I could just send it to you, Mayor Benz, to put it on a future agenda, and then we could get the code put out.
Perfect.
Or if there is a need to have any kind of head nod from council. I kind of heard that everybody was interested in looking at that, so I can just
In
send
a
it
work
to you.
session?
Yeah, to do a work session.
Yep, send it to me and we'll get it on. Yeah,
Okay,
be great.
perfect.
Anything else? Anything else,
And then you'll get
Councilmember
it a week
Harrison?
before.
Yeah, make sure it's 7 days.
Yeah.
So basically, if we want staff to give us things a week before, we probably need to give ideas of what needs to go on agenda maybe 2 weeks before, or 10 days, like something like that. It's just
Correct. So as you're
showing
thinking,
respect, yeah.
as you're thinking about them, or you come across them, send me an email with what you're thinking, and we'll get them to where they need
If
to go.
we
We'll
can,
get them on.
unless there's urgency.
Well, and then you can just kick it back and say it's not making this one, but it'll make the next one.
Yep.
So.
Then you'll know.
Yeah.
But there will always be some emergency stuff.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes.
And-
But
Okay, I don't think 2 weeks out. It's one day at a time.
That's-
There's a lot. Yeah, I just think flexibility. The week out was documentation that we need to read through is what my concern was with that. Like all the development agreements and all that kind of stuff. And I hope we get thorough documentation. I mean, what we got tonight was lacking in some of the exhibit items, which I think were very important to look at as well. So anyway.
we will continue to work down on that. So I appreciate it. I'll take a motion to end tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
So we had our first by Councilmember Newell, second by Councilmember Lockhart. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Have a phenomenal evening. See you tomorrow.